na tebe, nemoj pričat, znači stali smo sa špicom, idemo na tebe za 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the DBL podcast, the place where we are talking about the business side of dentistry. And tonight, as you can see, it will be a little bit of a different podcast than what we are usually doing, because on the other side, live from Netherlands, is my dear friend, my mentor, my evil brother, Dr. An Nguyen. Hello, An.
Yes. I am here live from you guys from the Netherlands, from my home. So I'm super excited to do this.
You know, when we were kids, I was watching like guitar players. They would have videos like this where they would teach other people star licks, you know, and stuff. And this is like a dream come true. I'm at a podcast. I'm having a guitar in my lap. You have a bunch of guitars on your side. But we will actually talk about music and business.
Yeah, that's right.
So, just to make a short introduction about you and I so that people get to know you better, how did we start, two of us? What happened? How did we meet?
Ooh, I think this is kind of like 7 or 8 years ago we met. We knew from each other through a mutual friend, a mutual connection. And then eventually fate decided that we met up in Amsterdam. And having dinner with each other, we kind of discovered that we both had a passion for music. We both had a passion for business. And we started to collaborate right there and then. And then from then on, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 editions of the things you do in Croatia, of the things that I do here in the Netherlands have occurred. And since then, we've always stayed connected. And I kind of think we're married right now at this point.
I just remember one thing you said. You said, if we want to do something together, it has to be epic.
Epic.
So
that's right.
Does this, what we are doing today, does it falls into the category of doing something epic? Because the technical side...
It was horror, brother. It was
today.
horror.
And before we start, I just want to say big thank you to Dunja, to Lovro, to Ante, all the broadcast HR team who made this technically possible, because trust me, this is technically a very demanding thing to do. Back to you, An.
Yes, so thank you for the production team over there. It saved me a lot of headaches up until 30 minutes before we started. So I got this crazy idea of doing a podcast and involving music and guitars and live music. And Sinisha is not the person to say no, so he fully said yes. He gave it, like I said, give it a full ass instead of a half ass. And now here we are, trying something new. It's super exciting. And one of the things that I actually wanted to talk about first when I was discussing this with Sinisha is, you know, how does us learning to play guitar, how does learning music, did that influence us in some way, or did we take any lessons out of it? And coming to think of it, for me personally, it has. I've learned so many things playing music, because I started when I was 15, and as a self-taught guitarist. I don't know, Sinisha, are you self-taught or did you have lessons?
I went into a primary music school, but right. I started to play very young, and basically I'm also self-taught as you are.
Yeah, a lot of guitarists are self-taught. And to tie it back into the lessons, I think it was 1999 that I was 15 years old at the time. And I heard this piece of music that really changed something in me. I did not know who it was. I did not know what it was. I just remember sitting at high school, sitting in class, hearing it over the radio and thinking, this stuff is good. It's doing something, right? And it's growing up as a kid, I really never had a voice to express myself. And that song that touched me so deeply to my core that I was like, I have to learn how to play this. But I didn't have a guitar. I didn't know what band it was, so I remember going back home, asking my parents if I could please buy a guitar. They did not know what they got themselves into after that, but they said yes. And at that time, I get this guitar, not this one, but I buy a guitar and I started noodling, and I discovered that I knew nothing about music. I knew nothing about playing music. So back in the day, 1995, Turned out it was Metallica, the biggest metal band in the world. And they were playing this song, and the song was called Nothing Else Matters. And we didn't have YouTube at the time, right? So how do you learn? How do you learn stuff like that? So intuitively, I started to build a system how to learn to play the guitar, because it's such a complex instrument. I did not know how to do it. But I discovered that they had this DVD of a live concert.
Wow.
So I just bought the DVD, the tape at the time.
But by the way, probably most of the people watching us, they don't know what a DVD is. So for the younger generation, it was a round thing that you put into the square thing, and then you play some videos.
Yeah, and then you play it, and then I discovered that the camera zoomed in on the guitar while they were playing it. So I discovered I might be able to learn this song just by watching them and imitating what they're doing. So I discovered that, if you want to learn something very complex intuitively, you have to take it back to fundamental parts and just start watching and imitating. Turns out, all these years later, it has a name, and it's called the Fundamental Principles. And I've discovered that my learning style to whichever lesson or whichever skill in life has been basically through the ways of fundamental principles thinking. We just said, break it down to fundamental things and build from the fundamental things, make it into something more complex.
So would that be like the first lesson that we want to share today, that when you learn new stuff, the way to go is to break it down to the essentials?
Yes, it sounds very simple, and it is. So deconstruct things, break it down to the simplest thing that you can understand. Let's say you get a math equation, 100 times 100, and you don't know the answer, you don't know how to approach it. Just go back to the fundamental core principle you know it's true, which is 1 + 1 is 2. And then start building from there on. So what I did was I started imitating those guys, right? So what happened in the beginning, I just realized if someday I would be able to play that fucking intro by Nothing Else Matters, I would be happy.
You would be the king.
I would be the king. So I just started, right? Very simple.
And very slow.
Yes, super slow. Over time, you can build it. Into something beautiful.
Wow, sounds amazing.
This literally took me 6 months to learn just this thing. And if you just keep on going, you can add up the little hard parts, right? And then you can add little substances and little nuances. Are you going to play linearly, or are you going to put emotion in it, put effects in it, whatever? The thing I learned, for the people back home, the thing I learned firstly is if you want to learn a new skill, start slowly by starting with the fundamental principles. And I discovered that this is actually how Elon Musk does things. That's why he's so good in different things. Because if you deconstruct everything you have, every challenge you do, if you bring all of them into fundamental principles, first principles, you can mix and match those skills and eventually start building new skills.
Yeah, to add on to that, I had the privilege to be in the Coronado, which is in front of San Diego, where the Navy SEALs are based, and one of their commanders gave us a lecture, and they use a phrase, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So they have the same principle. They say slow is smooth, and then smooth becomes fast.
Yes, and smooth becomes fast with repetition, right? Every skill worth learning has a lot of time invested into it. As I'm sure you are aware, since you build businesses, I'm actually very, we start slow and we want to go fast, and then in the end we are super afraid of failure. But I don't know how it is with you when you started your business career. How did you build skills? Were you afraid of failure or whatever?
Well, my first story is actually a story of a public failure. And what I will try to play, and I emphasize the word try because bear in mind, Anne and I, we are not professionals. We are like wannabe rock stars.
Yep.
And actually, I had the privilege to be when I was 15 or 16 years old. There was this competition. You could choose a song to play, and I will play the solo from this song. And I had my classic nylon string guitar, and I was playing in front of the audience in the biggest concert hall in Croatia. And halfway through the solo, I was so stressed out, I forgot how to play the solo. So maybe what I will try today is to actually play that solo from beginning to end and see if I can make up for that first, let's call it, public speaking failure I had in my life. What do you say?
I would think it's a great idea, but I'm also curious, what did you do when you forgot to play the solo?
Well, halfway through the solo, I sang the rest of the solo because my fingers were frozen, and then I just sang the rest of the solo. So I was resourceful, but let me try to play it first, and then
you get a chance to redeem yourself now. Let's go.
I have a chance to redeem. So, Dunja.
He did it, ladies and gentlemen. He redeemed himself. He did it.
It went well, but it was my first big public appearance, and it went completely sideways. And basically, the lesson from my failure is actually you have to be resourceful enough. So I sang the half of the solo when I was not able to play it, and I was able to get through the fear. And I think the biggest outcome for me was courage that I found in that public appearance. And
Right.
actually, you are the person who helped me a lot in my last 6 or 7 years, because I started to come to your trainings for public speaking. And
Right.
now I'm in a live podcast with you. So basically, you are the one who helped me to turn around this fear and help me to present in public like we are doing today.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I remember it very clearly. Like for the people who don't know, I'm also a keynote speaker, and during my process of developing as a keynote speaker, I discovered that the knowledge that I gained from training myself and consuming all the knowledge would also be very well served to teach to other people. So I decided to organize a course in which I teach people how to do public speaking, how to overcome their fears. The course it's called Endgame, and I run it once a year. And Sinisha is going to be actually our participant who's coming back for the 5th time for 5 years in a row.
Repetition.
Repetition makes key, and there's a funny thing that you just said, which we also cover on day 1 of the course, which is if you have fear, what turns it into courage, right? You just said you have to
Yes.
be courageous enough. Do you remember what we discussed in the course?
Yes, I remember, and what we wrote down, our biggest fear and how we handled it.
Yeah, and for everybody else, if you have fear and you want to turn it into courage, the best way is to take action. And what Sinisha said was very true. Once we feel fear, right, we are in front of a big crowd, or in front of our team, or in front of our patients. If the stakes are high and something goes sideways, many of us revert back to freezing. So there's 3 ways you can go to this. If something fails, you fight, you flight, or you freeze. And freezing occurs a lot. But if you freeze and you take action, you take massive action, you turn it into courage. And that's how you save yourselves in situations that that go sideways. And I've been in a lot of them, by the way. I've been in a lot of them.
Me too.
Yeah. And it's a great journey to see within my course to see and help people, become better versions of the communicators that I want to be.
So what we covered so far, let me make a short summary. So we learned something about deconstructing new things to the
Yes.
fundamentals.
Yes.
We learned about how important repetition is, slowly repeating stuff and then gaining speed, with time. And then if we go back to the theme of public speaking, you should be resourceful, you should be prepared, you should overcome your fear and just take action. It doesn't have to be perfect. And today,
That's right.
probably we will have some hiccups, some mistakes, something will go sideways, but actually you just have to go through it and continue what you're doing.
Done is better than perfect is the old adage that they say.
Yeah, I love
A lot
it.
of us don't start, right? Because we're so afraid of failure. And then we never get started and never something doesn't happen. Done is better than perfect. And I've really, as a recovering perfectionist, I really had to learn that, a wise man once told me, perfectionism is to know what has to be perfect and to know what has to be just good enough. And not everything has or can be perfect.
I have a little bit different perspective on perfection. I heard recently that Vince Lombardi, that famous NFL trainer,
Yes.
he said, on the way to perfection, we learn about excellence. So we can never reach that perfection, but on the way there, we learn how to be excellent in what we are doing, and I really love that.
Yeah, Vince Lombardi, very famous for his speech, right? Winning is not a one-time thing. Winning is an all-time thing. And actually, if people are interested in improving their communication skills, there's a few books that I would recommend for people to read. But there's one in particular, come to think of it. I think it's Dale Carnegie. And this one I read more than 10 years ago, and it changed everything. It started my journey. Right? Because when I became a speaker, I realized that my job was to be able to influence and convince people of the message that I want to get across. Now, there's a book, it's called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And I think the first edition was in the 20s or the 1910s or something.
Yes.
But it's still very true. The content is super, super, super valuable. I recommend it to everybody who wants to read it.
So before we move on to the next lesson from your side of the world, I just want to say that recently Kyle Stanley, a doctor from Beverly Hills, who is also internationally renowned speaker, he said in his podcast that 85% of the success in dentistry comes from communication.
I agree.
I love
think
that.
Even more.
I love
Yeah.
that. So communication is
yeah.
super important, but what's the next lesson? What's the next thing we will go into from your studio?
So when we talk about communication, I always have this. People used to ask me, why are communication skills important? Right? So I am technically very sound. I can do my job very clearly. Why should I learn to communicate effectively? And I used to have this long, winding answer that made no sense. But it all boils down to this. You can be a top doctor, a top accountant, top professional. You can have a vision that is super grand. But if you are this good and your ability to communicate is this good, you will never be able to actually show your skills. You're just as good as you're as good as your communication skills. A lot of the times when we want to communicate a vision to our team, or we want to convince people to take action or to do something, and they don't do it, it's not because our vision is bad, or it's not because we don't have the knowledge. It's because we don't know the way how to get it across to other people. And that's, in my opinion, where it all starts, because communication skills are at the base of human connection. And if you don't know how to connect to other people, you will likely run into a lot of pitfalls along the way. So communications are at the fundamental part of human connection. And if you master that, you will master a lot of things, business side or in your personal life and everything in between.
I totally agree with that, what you're saying.
Yeah, it's a skill that, we are never really taught, right? It's something school doesn't cover.
Something we pick up on the way as we go.
Yeah, but it's crazy since everything is about communication, right? And everything is about connection.
Yes. Well, I'm an engineer, so for me, it was all about my analytical mind. And
Right.
actually what we are doing today, and I discovered that recently, I like to say about myself that I'm a very slow learner. Some things it took me decades to learn. And what I learned is that when I play the guitar, actually I'm feeding that emotional part of my brain. And
Right.
we all know that we have that split brain study where we have the analytical brain and the emotional brain. And at work, from 9 to 5, I'm just flexing my analytical part of the brain. I'm making decisions, I'm problem solving, it's all analytical. And
Yeah.
those things, when I play the guitar, then I feed the emotional part and I somehow create the balance for me.
Right, so what Sinisha is actually talking about is the split brain. If you take it very black and white, you have the left analytical part of the brain and the right creative part of the brain. Math, mathematicians, theory, logic, everything for engineers, very left brain oriented. Creativity, music, love, emotion, very right brain oriented. Well, too much of both will get you into trouble. But where the magic happens is the in-between. So what Sinisha is actually saying is, if you train your left brain a lot during the day, and you also try to, pick up some creative parts during the right brain, you will forge new neurological connections in your brain, which will anchor, a lot of knowledge or anchor, patterns in your system.
Yeah.
That's the thing also with guitar playing. I don't know if you recognize this. When I was walking my dog this afternoon and I was rehearsing in my head the parts of the songs that I wanted to play, I totally forgot how to play them. I was actually panicking walking my dog, a song that I've been playing for more than 15 years with my left brain thinking. I was like,
I'm gonna freeze.
I don't know how to play it. I cannot explain to you now how to do it. But the moment I pick up this guitar, that right brain gets activated and just muscle memory kicks in. And that comes with repetition again.
Then let me try to do the next song on my side, because you said, let me take the guitar. And this guy that I will try to play the next song, that was one of his favorite phrases on the stage. Would you go with that for me to play another song?
I think I can speak for everybody
Okay.
to say yes.
So
yes,
Dunja,
yes.
let's try the next backing track. And let's see if you can recognize the song. Let's go from the beginning. This is the technical stuff I was telling you. Just restart the backing track, please.
I'm thinking it kind of sounds like Prince somehow.
It kind of sound like Prince, and
Why
one of the
this song?
things
Why this
one of
song?
the things that I learned at the end game is that you can actually boil down a movie to a single word.
Mm.
And it's one
Right.
of the exercises we did. And actually this song, when you hear that first chord, when you hear the chord,
Mm.
you know exactly
It was literally the first chord that I recognized it.
which song it is. And that's one of the things that inspires me, and I learned it from you as well, is how can we simplify our communication? How can we tell more and say more with speaking less? So
Right.
how is it, what's your perspective on that? How to simplify the communication?
It depends on which situation you're finding yourself in. So let's say there's two situations. One is you're going to do a lecture or a keynote or something that you can prepare, right? And the other one is free speech and in conversation. So with the first one first, the thing is, when I started my speaking career, I learned a very valuable lesson. And I ran into a guy that later on became my mentor. And we were talking to each other, and he was training me in the speaking part. And I'd done a few years of speaking. I had a few years of speaking under my belt at that point. And I was there and I traveled to the US to speak with him and do the training. And I had to do like a 2-minute prepared speech. And how I was used to doing it is I had so much self-assurance in myself that I could just wing it.
You were winging it.
I was winging it. 99 out of 100 times, people could not, they would not know. So I got away with it. So I did that at that time. So I was standing in front of him. I do my 2-minute thing, and I winged it. And I thought it was pretty good. And he told me, "Wow, that was pretty good. I can see that you do this a lot and that you have experience. You're good, but you're also forgettable."
I love
Now,
that sentence.
That was, for somebody who thought he was pretty good at what he does, my world just collapsed, right? And I was like, this kind of hurts, but I'm not going to show you. But tell me more. The reason I was forgettable is that he said, I can see that you are just winging it. And the best ones, the best speakers, the best communicators rehearse. And we're going back to the repetition again.
Yes.
They rehearse, they rehearse, they rehearse. So if you lecture, if you do a keynote, if you have to prepare a presentation, you will need to script it out, which means literally write down the words that you're going to say.
But why don't you stop here for a second? So
Yeah.
out of, we are both members of dental community, and
Yes.
we know a lot of dentists, and we know a lot of speakers. In your experience, how many people are scripting their preparations?
At most, from what I can judge, at most,
Like 1 out of 10?
10%. What 10% is being very gracious.
Yeah, that's my
I
experience.
think
as
1
well.
out of 10. Yeah. And even though when they script it and they rehearse it, then you still have that divide of somebody who is very good and extraordinary, who can make it sound effortless, and the robot that sounds like he's reading it from autocue.
Yeah,
So
I
even
think
in
that
there's a definition.
and for all the dental friends who are watching the podcast, don't get me wrong, people are relying on the clinical content because most of the dentists are lecturing about the clinical content, and what I see is they're deeply relying on the quality of their clinical content,
Right.
and that gives them that assurance to go on stage and just talk about it.
Yes, and the clinical part is always very good, right? They're top
Yeah,
clinicians.
yeah.
The delivery, a lot of time I can see that there's some way to improve in that. And the way to improve is to rehearse your script. And when you rehearse, see where you can scrap like parts that are either repetitive or don't add value to the content. So you boil it down. It's a funnel. You just boil it down to the essentials.
But also, while you prepare, what I learned also from you is we decrease what you call the cognitive load. It's the
Yes.
stress when you walk to that stage, and if you rehearse the material enough times, the stress of not knowing what to say next will be much less than if you just go there and you just wing it.
Yes. So this kind of ties back into what I was saying before with the guitar playing, right? When I go to play the guitar, basically 99% of it is muscle memory. It's just in there. 2 minutes before, I don't know how I'm going to play it. But once I get that guitar in my hand, muscle memory kicks in. The same thing, the same principle works with rehearsal. If you rehearsal it well enough, it will be stored into your brain. It will be neurologically linked to your slide deck if you have it. And once you step on that stage, you will basically from memory, from muscle memory, be able to deliver your message, which, what Sinisha said, decreases your cognitive load. You will not have to think about what you say next or think about your presentation. So you have more headspace to concentrate on the public, to concentrate on the people in the audience to see if they are getting the message and your performance. And this is where I think it separates from the people that are extraordinary from the people that are good.
And one thing also from my side and my experience is that it's not about the content, it's always about the audience and your connection to the audience. And I see a lot of people focus on their content and worry about the content, and they
Right.
forget to establish the connection with the audience and actually talk to the people in the audience, like establishing the eye contact, walking into the audience and really delivering the message and what you're saying to see if they are receiving it.
Right. Because in the end, I also cover this during the course, is there's two types of speakers. Expert speakers and experiential speakers. 99.9% of the dentists or professionals who are going to present are hired to talk about a certain topic that they're an expert in, which makes them expert speakers. The pitfall for expert speakers is that you step on stage to lecture your knowledge to the people, right? You can see that your clinical work is good, and you want to deliver that knowledge for the audience to understand how to do it. But there's a difference, though. Experiential speakers also care about the experience that the audience has, which is always try to get them emotionally invested, inspire them, educate them, and entertain them. And in my humble opinion, the experiential speakers are the ones that are remembered. The real expert speakers are one of the many, in my experience.
But today I think we are introduced the third category of the speakers. It's the rock and roll speakers, or like wannabe rock and roll speakers like we are doing today with our guitars.
Right, and the thing is, I was talking to you earlier about this. Why, right, we were talking about why do we want to introduce music into this, except from the part that we want to be rock stars and we want to play the guitar. You said something that was very interesting to me. You said music is the only language that everybody understands and needs no translation.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right, that I never realized it in such a way.
Yeah, I saw it from one of our, probably the most famous piano player, Ivo Pogorelic from Croatia. It was his statement, and it's such a powerful statement because it's the only language that doesn't need translation, what we are doing today with music.
Right, and the analogy that I have with music and delivering content or giving presentations or communication skills is, if a musical piece is beautifully written, right? Every note is perfect, and if you listen to it, it's a piece of heaven. But it's badly performed. Is it going to be good or bad? It's going to be bad.
Yeah.
But a mediocrely written piece of music, performed extraordinarily well,
Like I did today, thank you.
like you did today, like with the Redemption, will be remembered as good.
Yeah, and
Right?
you know,
That's crazy.
one more thing, why did I decide to play the song from Prince or by Prince? I don't know if you're aware of that, but he was recording almost 24/7, and even though he left us much too early, there is a thing called the vault where there are thousands of hours of his recordings that were never published. So this guy left such a huge legacy, and for me, Prince is like the model of working ethic because he was all in. You know, he was not half-assing it, as you said at the
Right.
beginning.
He
He
went
was
full
all
ass.
in, and he was full ass, and his work ethic was just another level.
That's the thing also that you see with everybody, any person that's very good at something, what you don't see is the hours that they had to put into it, right? And the failures that you had. Dude, I remember literally nights of sitting with my guitar and just doing the same run all over again with literally bleeding fingers. That's like, now I remember it still starts, my fingers start to hurt, you know?
So do you want to put your fingers to some use?
Yes, and I'm going to have to introduce to people to that because what I always say about communication, what is the thing that I strive for as a keynote speaker? It's connection with the audience, right? If I don't have a connection, I cannot deliver my message, right? So the connection that I build to the audience is like a bridge. The bigger the bridge is, the more information I can send over that bridge to the audience. The smaller that bridge is, the less information I can bring over to the audience.
Right.
Now, when do people really vibe with you? When do people really think, you know what, I kind of like this guy, I like what he's saying, I'm all in, I'm going to listen to this, and it's really vibing with me? It's just a simple word. It's called harmony. Right? When we harmonize with people,
Wow.
our frequencies, they just align. What happens in our brains, in our reptilian brain, is once we harmonize, we connect,
We resonate.
we resonate. There's a thing, it's called limbic resonance. I'm not going to go into that right now. But if you take anything home from this, is harmonization is the reason why we connect to other people. Now, I can demonstrate this, that how harmonization can build to something very, very beautiful. I'm going to demonstrate with a music piece. So I have this song. It's I've broken it down into separate parts. So first I'm just going to play you the drum track. And the drum track is, I'm going to ask Sinisha what he thinks of the drum track. Let me check. There it is. Just the drum track first. It's a rhythm, right?
Yeah.
Does it do anything to you?
Now it does a little bit, but
Right, you cannot help but nod to the rhythm,
Yeah.
right? So I see the drums in a song as the rate of speech.
wow.
This is how you get people to tune into you and just go with the beats with you, the tempo.
Now
how
I'm
fast
nodding.
do I talk?
I'm nodding.
There you
now,
go.
yeah.
Once you go to the club and the music comes on, what do you nod to? You nod to the beat.
Yes.
That's the first way to get people in. I'm going to add something, the bass, same part. And I predict it's going to start speaking to you a little bit more. Now there's melody.
Yes.
Rate of speech, melody of voice. It's starting to tell a story.
Yeah, it's completely
Right.
different now.
Completely different. Just two things. Rhythm, melody. Rate of speech, how fast do you talk? And how you use your voice. Because if you just use it like this and monotonous all the time, it's not going to be interesting, right?
Yes.
Now, we play with something else. Let's sing with our voice. Now I'm going to add a guitar. Same piece. What does this do? Let's starts to speak even more. Right? Again, a totally different piece.
Wow.
It's good, but it's not extraordinary. How about we make it extraordinary? Ah, I'm fucked up. What does that do?
Wow. That's magic.
Right? This is what harmonization does. It takes the sum of the parts and turns it into something different. All the sum of the parts by themselves don't mean anything. But when they work in harmony together, you get something that's way much more, and it speaks to the emotions of the people that are listening, even though you can screw it up. Do you agree with this? Does this make sense?
It makes sense, and you did great. We are both performing live, so there is always this like stress, positive stress, and the adrenaline of playing live.
Right.
In front of actually it's just my family watching the podcast, because it's always when you're delivering something new to the market, and we are doing it right now, we always ask our friends and family to watch us first, so no big harm done. It's just my family and some friends watching the podcast today.
The funny thing is when you, especially in those days of today, we always want the big numbers, right? It would be cool to have like 1,000 viewers or something. But let's just realize that 1 is better than 0, and
Yes.
2 is better than 1. So I'll take it. I'll take it any day of the week.
But what I learned about myself, from the disc profile, and one of my guests, Uroš, was explaining about how different we are with 4 types of personalities.
Right.
I'm a green person, which means I'm like a long distance runner. So for
Mhm.
me, everything I do is like a long distance things. I like to have
You like
deep
to build it.
relationships, good relationships, partnerships, and also the podcast is something that has to be developed. And I'm immensely grateful to you that you are investing your time today to do it together with me.
It's always fun to try new stuff with you, because I always know that if I tell you about it, you will say, okay, let's do it, without knowing how to do it. So for me, it's always a learning experience, and also for me getting out of my comfort zone to do something new.
Yeah, the getting out of comfort zone is actually became the place where I live. And
Right.
I just wrote today in my weekly article that I'm doing this today for the first time in my life, playing live, and you being in Holland, and we are doing this live podcast is just something I never did before. So, but it feels good. I really, I'm really super happy, and it really, really feels good what we are doing.
I think it's a part of something which we as people tend to forget a lot of the times when we do something new. It's supposed to be fun. And a lot of the times, me included, sometimes I do stuff because I think it's cool, but I forget about that fun part.
Yeah.
And this is super fun for me because I've never done this before. Up until like 30 minutes before we started the podcast, we had technical problems,
Yeah.
not knowing whether we could pull this off,
Yes.
right? But we never lost hope, and it worked out because of help of other people.
But this brings me to my, let's call it a final message that I wanted to deliver today. So let me play a song for you, and then I will ask you to describe what kind of feeling or emotion these songs brings to you. Would that be okay?
Right. I would love to.
Dunja, let's do it.
Dude, I got goosebumps right here. Maverick to Mother Goose. Maverick to Mother Goose, are you there?
So this song is always, for me, creates the emotion of victory and the emotion of celebration. And this ties into what you were saying just a minute ago. And basically, in my experience, we don't celebrate enough. We just get tied into our 9-to-5 work, into our daily work, into our busy lives, and we don't take time aside to celebrate even the smallest achievements, or I would say even some failures. You know, today we failed a couple of times, but I will celebrate big time, because all this what we are doing and the messages that we are delivering for me are just another level. So celebration is something that is, I want to have much more in my life and to be much more playful, to have much more fun in the things that I'm doing. And actually, I'm doing it right now together with you.
It's for me, it's super heartwarming, because that's a message that, you know, that's, I think, one of the fundamental things when you talk about first principles again, why our connection is so good over the years, right? We connected over a lunch talking about things that we were passionate about, and now, lo and behold, almost 10 years later, we are doing that thing, right? We're talking about music, we're talking about business. We've had so many adventures together with so much stress, but it was always fun. And, you know, even though you are thousands of kilometers away, man, you playing Top Gun, because that's what the song was, Top Gun.
Yes.
I think there is not one more iconic bell tone that you can strike that people will instantly know that it's Top Gun.
Yes.
And for me, this song, it goes back into 1984, I think the movie was. I wanted to become a fighter pilot after I watched the movie. This is the power of emotion and the power of what music and connection can bring.
I totally agree with you, and I learned this lesson when I did, and we did it together, training with Tony Robbins. Right. And actually, up to that point in my life, I was just a workaholic. I was working 24/7. I tried to create a good life for me and my family, and I almost never celebrate. I was just busy. And going back to the Kyle Stanley story, he said that in his personal life, one of his close members of family unfortunately died, and he missed the funeral because he had an appointment in his dental office. And he said, you know, the bottom line, it was not an urgency, it was just a regular patient, but I talked myself into the story of where I have to be there and I have to work, and I didn't take time aside to be present in my life. So this celebrating part, the fun part, the playful part, it's such an important ingredient to have in our lives, not just work.
And I think that's one of the powerful things that I see in what you are doing, also with your summit, with your event, right? Because it's later this November, right?
Yeah, 21st to 23rd.
So 21st to 23rd of November, and I've been to previous editions. The thing that really ties everything together in that course over the 2 or 3 days is the fact that you celebrate victories during the course with the people that attend. And I think that's one of the things that really sets it apart and makes it an event that exceeds expectations every time, because not only do you get the factual knowledge, you get something that's magical between those days, and that lies in the celebration of the skills and the relationships that are formed during those days.
And I can see exactly what you're saying, because the feedback we get from the participants after 3 days is they start to feel different. At first, they don't understand why we are celebrating so often. Basically, in between every lecture, we try to really ramp up everything and then finish with a party. But then they somehow start to realize on a, I would say, subconscious level that we are connecting with each other, and that the person who came to the summit and the person who are leaving the summit are not the same people anymore.
Right. So that's the funny thing. It all ties back down to harmony again. Because what is harmony? It's that thing that makes people wonder, why should I care? Once you harmonize, you will leave different than you came. And that's the power of the event that you're doing. And the fun thing is, which I'm very looking forward to, because this edition I'm going to be spending 3 days with you on stage.
Yes.
Right? So not only as a speaker as I've done before, but this time we're going to together be the people who guide the participants through their journey of the 3 days. And man, we have some crazy fucking ideas.
But we don't disclose anything in this podcast.
Right.
So as we are getting close to the end of the podcast, what would be your final messages, takeaway messages? What would you like to leave with the audience as we are coming to the end of the broadcast?
So if there's anything I would like to give people, because there is so much that I want to transmit, but there's a time and a place for that. For now, I would say every little change that you want, or everything that you want to do, or everything you want to learn is possible. I know it's something that everybody says, but a lot of the time people say it without telling you how. So I'm telling you, this is how. Break complex matter down into fundamental first principles. And it can be as easy as watching another person how to do it, right? Because the old Greek, they said, there's 3 levels of art. The first is imitating, the second one is emulating, and the third one is innovating. And it always starts with imitating other people first. So keep your eyes open and just take one step. One step in the beginning, in the beginning can amount to great differences long term. And I think I can attest to that. Sinisha can attest to that. 1 is better than 0. Take this step. You don't lose anything.
From my side, I want to say that probably it's one of the first lessons in dentistry, the business side of dentistry, but I would say it's much wider. It's like life lessons that the speakers were using guitars to explain, the life messages and the business messages. And I'm so super proud that we challenged ourselves. It was your idea, which I kindly accepted. It was a no-brainer for me. And I just hope that we left some good messages, that we were able to produce some of the best songs that shaped our lives and shaped our businesses. And I'm so super looking forward to see you in Zagreb in November.
I'm looking forward to traveling there, thinking of these crazy-ass ideas, and giving Dunja and the production crew stress.
So that's right. I want to really say it one more time to Dunja, Lover, and Ante. They did an amazing job today. It was technically super challenging to do it. So, Anne, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
My pleasure,
and to all of you watching, it means my family and friends, but maybe there is also some new faces watching the podcast. Thank you for being with us. and see you soon in the next episode in the forthcoming weeks. Until then, stay strong and well.
We are out.